Hi, I'm Maggie Apel, co-director of WILMA's Leadership Initiative. Welcome to WILMA's Leadership Accelerator Virtual Workshops for Real Leaders.
And I'm Vicki Janowski, also co-director of WILMA's Leadership Initiative with Maggie. And we just want to thank you for joining us. Every week this month, we'll have a different conversation about leadership topics from area women. Also this month, this marks the 5th anniversary of when Maggie and I launched Women to Watch Leadership Initiative 5 years ago. We're very proud of the accomplishments that both the program and the women who've gone through it have done, so we'll be highlighting that as well on our social media channels, on wilmamag.com, and
to watch these videos and to learn more about WILMA leadership programs, visit wilmaleadership.com.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today for WILMA's Leadership Accelerator Virtual Workshops for Real Women. I'm Elizabeth Stelzenmuller and I am the Events and Digital Assistant with WILMA Magazine. And today we're going to be talking about bossing up and what that means in regards to building in leadership skills and becoming an influential and impactful leader in our community. All three of the women sitting here next to me today have been involved with WILMA's Women to Watch program and graduates of our Women to Watch Leadership Institute. Not only are these women involved in our Women to Watch program, but they all bring a diverse but relatable perspective to today's conversation. To introduce all of them to you, to my immediate right here, I have Sherry Shaw. Sherry is the Assistant Dean for Student Success at UNCW. Next to her, I have Caitlin Maddox. Caitlin is the Program Director with Nourish NC. And Robin Williams, she is the Indirect Sourcing Governance Operations Leader with GE. So thank you ladies for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
To kind of kick things off, I'd love to hear from each of you about how you've intentionally or maybe not so intentionally developed as a leader and into the positions that you're in now, and what steps have you taken to get into those roles? Sherry, you want to start for us?
Sure. Currently, as you mentioned, my role is Assistant Dean for Student Success at UNCW in the College of Health and Human Services. And it took about 10 years or so for me to arrive at the dean level. I started at Illinois working as a program coordinator, developing programs for underrepresented students. From there, it was an opportunity of a lifetime to have an endowment by Manny Jackson. At that time, he was the CEO of the Harlem Globetrotters and really took a good liking to the program I created. And it went really well for a while, and I got poached from Illinois to Drexel University, and that's where that climb started happening. And I became Director of Student Services there. Then Manny came back and swooped me and asked me to be his chief of staff over his final project in Edwardsville, $66 million project. So I moved into business development out of education and really elevated me to think differently about what I wanted to do. But I realized at the end, I wanted to get back in academics. And so I was able to have this position be afforded to me. And it's been an amazing opportunity to come to Southeast North Carolina and continue my leadership in education.
Great. Caitlin?
Mine has been a varied path throughout my career, but I received my degree in social work from Appalachian State University, and I lived in Western North Carolina for many years and dabbled in a few different nonprofits and things like that, and for many years worked in a more, in the social work field, you would call it micro versus macro. Micro being much more one-on-one versus macro being more higher level change. And through my work more one-on-one, I recognize that while there's a lot of gratification that you can receive from that in your career, that I really do relate more to macro social work. So I took various jobs as program director, program coordinator. I coordinated 2 programs for the Housing Authority in Asheville for many years, and ultimately needed a change of scenery, change of pace. And so I moved to Wilmington, but I actually took a sabbatical when I first moved down here. And it was important to me to learn the nonprofits in the area and make sure that I was working for an agency that I really agreed with the mission and the way that we were providing services to our clients. And so when I learned of Nourish NC, it was actually very serendipitous. I met some people in the community who then I was actually asked to apply for the position. And when I received the position, I've been there for about 2.5 years now. And so it's been wonderful being able to grow our programs and see the changes that we've had from our agency. We joke all the time that we're a staff of 3.5. So I know that my presence is important and integral, and that's really rewarding when it comes to, going to bed at night, going to sleep at night, and knowing that you were able to enact change in the community that you work, live, and play in. So,
That's great. And Robin?
All right, so as you stated, I am the Indirect Sourcing Governance Operations Leader for GE. And I think you asked the question whether it was intentional or not, and everything that I do has been intentional. And in preparing me for where I am today and in this role, and even being, a guest panel, right? So my background, I'm an engineer by education, mechanical engineer. And I started out in the automotive industry, very process-driven, quality-driven. So taking those skill sets, always was intentional about filling in the gaps that I identified in my professional development career. So at that time, back in like 2000, I think early 2000, Six Sigma was very popular, and I was very curious about it. So filling that gap, I became a black belt. Doing that, being intentional about filling the gap, opened up several other doors, right? So worked for Ford Motor Company 10 years, black belt, also process engineering. But because I developed that skill set, I was able to come to Southeastern North Carolina and be a black belt for another organization prior to joining GE. And again, always curious, always intentional about how can I fill the gaps that I have professionally, and that opened the doors where I was a master black belt in Six Sigma. I had a leadership program, project management leadership program. So again, just sticking to what do I need to do to fill those gaps and being intentional in filling it. And in doing so, learning a lot of skill sets that afforded me this opportunity now where I'm at in global ops as indirect sourcing leader.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that and kind of talking on, being intentional and transitioning that into being influential into each of the roles that you're in, which are all very different. What sort of advice would you give someone that's maybe looking to take either those initial steps into becoming more influential in their community, or maybe they just moved into a new city, and it sounds like a lot of you guys have relocated, so how do you become influential in a new place? I mean, what are some of if you have any examples of a situation that you've gone through?
Yeah, I can start if you. Well, I think for me, one thing that I did is when I knew that I was arriving here to Southeast North Carolina, I looked to see what were opportunities for women leaders. Of course, WILMA was one thing that caught my attention, but also Leadership Wilmington was an opportunity. We have Leadership North Carolina, that's a statewide program. There's a lot of amazing national organizations. As Caitlin mentioned, there's so many nonprofits, so there's going to be applied learning and community engagement. One of the things that I really wanted to do was make sure that I established my why. Why am I arriving here at this point? Why am I arriving to Southeast North Carolina? Although I'm coming for something more personal, this position, how can I make sure that I influence and impact this area that I'm in? And so for me, it was very multifaceted. I knew that I had a job to do, so I found a mentor that was the level above me. So Kathy Browder, she was Associate Dean of Academic Affairs. She became a mentor to me. And I asked her the questions I needed to do as to how do I facilitate this role of a dean? How do you lead and model? Things of that nature. So she navigated UNCW for me. The other thing that she did is she exposed me to Leadership North Carolina. And within my first year here, I was in a 55, person group of Leadership North Carolina that took me all across the state. And coming from Illinois and not knowing North Carolina, that was pivotal because it really helped me understand the tragic parts of North Carolina and also the amazing parts, all the things that it has done for the history, but then it helped me again find my footing, as you mentioned, filling in the gaps. And then Robin and I actually did Leadership Wilmington together, and that was the same year. And then a couple years later, we've also done WILMA together, me and Caitlin. So I think that one of the important things that I would say to anyone who wants to start off and be thinking about a leader you need to understand the core of who you are and your why. Why are you in that field you're in? Is it because you've always been intentional and you know that this is the next natural step? Are you that person that is just kind of going through the maze to arrive? Everybody's destination is different. And so randomly, I have a fashion degree. No questions, no judgment. But I thought that I wanted to be a buyer.
Right.
So my mom always asked me, what do you do with that? And I smile, you know? But I think that sometimes you have to, you know, challenge yourself and go different directions, but it'll always lead to where you're supposed to be. And I think that that is what I would say. Know your why. It'll help you find your what and your how. But you also need to make sure that you maneuver how to impact this community and leave it better than when you arose.
I think one part of being influential, as basic as it sounds, is getting to know people. You know, getting to know the community that you're in. And I know to Sherry's point, before even arriving in Wilmington, I sought out opportunities to get to know people and the companies and the movers and the shakers in the community. I actually applied for Leadership Institute before I moved here, so I did not get accepted that year with no job lined up in the area. I was like, but I will be a leader. So
You claimed it.
you know,
Right,
exactly.
It's
So,
intentional.
but I think that through those connections and getting to know people, I think one of the most important things is saying, what do you need? What can I do to help you? What can I do to get more involved in what you're doing? And that's what builds community. And ultimately, I think being influential is just about building community and recognizing that a lot of others have wants and needs that are different than your wants and needs, and helping bridge those gaps and, you know, build a better community, a better place for us to all live. So I think that, as basic as it sounds, get to know people, you know, go out, be uncomfortable. I think that that's one of those important things, is that if even if you strive to once a month put yourself in an uncomfortable situation, a situation that makes you a minority, a situation that makes you the least experienced or least knowledgeable about a situation that you're in, then you're going to constantly grow because you're learning and being influenced by others. So.
You guys hit it. I mean, I really don't have anything to add. You really touched upon it. So I guess to sum it up, and what I was going to say is know your value. Get out there, get uncomfortable. In order to help someone, you have to, again, know who you are and what skill sets you have in order to influence and help, right? So, and don't be afraid to get out there.
Thanks for that, guys. And to kind of switch gears a little bit, as female leaders in our community, what have you guys felt like has been the most significant barrier or an obstacle that you've had to overcome in building your career? And I see that you all might have something to say about this, because I know that we've all had that. So.
I mean, definitely from the corporate perspective, yeah.
I think for me, and I thought about that question, is just the lack of opportunity. That has been the biggest obstacle. And how do you work around that? Is getting exposure, getting out there, letting people know your value, showcasing your value, you understanding what your value is. And then from there, I think it'll open some more doors. But for me, I think that was the biggest obstacle for me, is not having the opportunity to do what I wanted to do. And yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
I fought that a little bit. I don't know, when I arrived to this role, I think I struggled to find my own confidence. And I think sometimes as a female leader, we often do that. You walk into a space and you may be one of 3 women in that space. And so first of all, you give each other the head nod, like, okay, you know, you hear, you know, and you pull up to the table and you pull out all your stuff. I struggled initially with understanding my worth at the table. You know, the people at the table had been there for many years. You know, this position that I came in, it was brand new. There hadn't been someone that I could follow or model or represent. And so it was really important for me to find who I was. And I struggled with that for a good year and a half, just trying to make sure that, you know, everyone's adding their input about a policy or procedure. And I would sit there and I'd take notes. And then what I was thinking that was right on the money, I would mute, you know, and I wouldn't share it. And then the next person would say it. I'm like, you know, like I missed the opportunity to add that input. And so I think for me, the challenge is definitely opportunities, but also you have to get that confidence up and know that you are deserving of the role you're in. You are deserving of the position you have at the table. You are deserving for all the communication you can add and value you can bring to the conversation and context. And you don't have to know everything, but you do need to have the wherewithal to know that your opinion and judgment is valuable.
And Caitlin, do you have anything to add?
I think a struggle I've had, I imagine a lot of other people have had, I think it's a little shift from what you two have shared. But I think one of the things that I've learned and struggled and continued to struggle to learn to do better is a lot to do with emotional intelligence, because we are put up against a wall a lot of times as women when you're direct in your communication. I am very emotive in my face, and that is sometimes difficult to hide how I'm feeling. And so learning how to recognize those social and communication cues from other people and recognize how other people might be perceiving what I'm saying and perceiving that differently because it's coming from a woman. I'll mention that in oftentimes in my career, it's coming from a woman who is younger than the other people. Yeah. And I think that that's often something that people struggle with. And so I can't say that I have the right answers other than continuing to work on it and continuing to be aware of it. And I think those opportunities for introspection are the way to continue to grow in your leadership roles, so that you can lead and direct people well with the, that they want to be led and directed. And so I think that that's a struggle. And again, I can't say that I've perfected it by any means, but I've learned a lot through my career and truthfully taken a back seat in some leadership situations because I was made to feel uncomfortable about that, and really learning and being empowered. I remember our first day of Leadership Institute, I brought it to our peer advisory group that it was something I wanted to work on while we were in our group together. And just hearing the inspiration from the women around me that essentially don't back down, boss up, don't do that, is the reassurance that we often need, but we have to hear it from an outside voice, because if you're only hearing it internally and it's negative, that's a lot of times difficult to overcome. So keep trying, I think.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of what my next question was going to be, is the importance of finding your voice as a leader and having that confidence and building that confidence. And you guys really touched on that, is bringing each other up. You talk about your peer groups and how you use your peers to help get outside of your own head and help with that. So, do you guys have any other, examples or advice for people that are still trying to build that confidence in themselves, that maybe don't have that network of people yet?
Yeah, I think you also need to be okay with cold calling. Like, I know for a lot of times I would reach out to someone who hadn't I met. I saw on LinkedIn that they had arrived at this next point, or they had participated in an institute or a program. But a lot of the things you can find, you took your Six Sigma classes. She didn't know about them. She filled in the gap. It wasn't part of her engineering program or degree. For me, it was, knowing that I wanted to feel more comfortable public speaking. So some people do, some classes. I pushed myself wherever I could to be in front of the camera or to be the one who gave the presentation in the class, whatever it could to get uncomfortable in that place. So maybe it's not a matter of having, your mentorship team lined up, but one of my favorite mentors told me that it is very important to have your own team board of directors. Yes. And so that is one thing that I've always done to try to make sure, okay, I want to join a couple of board positions. So I'm going to look to see what nonprofits are. I'm going to see who do I know in those places and who can mentor me to arrive there. I know that I want to be a dean by the time I turned 40. How do I arrive there? Let me find other deans who did it before they were 40, look at their degree pathway, look at what they established. Okay, now I need to reach out to them. And you may not know them, but I have found that most people are willing to support you within reason, what they can, or they'll redirect you to someone who has more opportunity. I think the thing is to become unafraid. One of the book I was reading, I was sharing with the ladies earlier, is called The Most Powerful Woman in the Room Is You. And I think that sometimes we get in our own way. We mute ourselves, we don't boss up. And And so it's important to understand that failures also are a way of growth. And you need to be able to ask for help and be able to seek mentorship. And if you don't have that lineup, find people who do. My friends, some of them are more educated. They have, all the degrees, or maybe they have all the networking. Maybe that's not my strength. So I position myself with my friend group who then become that leg or that arm for me to have that opportunity. Yeah.
I was going to add to that point is the network, and the tool is WLI, right?
Yes.
The Leadership Institute. So a small network, start out, right? And then you get to know them, and then I think it was the term 6 degrees of separation or 9 degrees of separation, one of those degrees, right? But so a person is going to know someone, right? Yep. So they may know someone who knows someone who knows someone. So if you're uncomfortable, I call myself an introvert. Most people don't agree with that, but I am. I really am. But what I do is I assert myself intentionally, insert myself in small networks, and from there it'll just grow.
Yep, it ripples.
It ripples. So that would be my advice, is start small in a small circle network. For me, it was WLI. And just to pivot a little bit, at WILMA's Leadership Institute, I was the first cohort to start the program. You got a shoulder. But what WILMA did for me, WILMA's Leadership Institute, is allowed me, and I tell this story to everyone, it allowed me to unmask. So I was able to boss up. Yeah. I was able to recognize my value and my authenticity. And because of going with this small group of like-minded women, powerhouses, was my cohort, they allowed me to be the real Robin. Flaws and all, but do me. And for that, now I could sit at the table. I could boss up, right? I could feel comfortable in my skin, still recognizing that I have to grow. But it started with that small network that allowed me to open up and be free to be who I am.
I hear you saying that create spaces. You have to, and sometimes you have to go in multiple spaces. Some of it's in leadership, some of it's in social, some of it's in friendship, some of it's in service. But you have to find those different spaces that allow you to grow your attributes and grow your core.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and so obviously, the past few months have looked a little bit different than they normally have. We're all kind of adapting to a different life and a different day-to-day routine. And how have you guys found either your leadership skills being tested or challenged, or found growth in this time? I know we've all had to adapt to a different day-to-day life. So what kind of situations have you guys been put in where you've been able to challenge that?
I think you got the story.
Yeah.
I'm still working. Obviously, in the nonprofit sector, we've seen an increase in need during economic downturn, which has, of course, resulted in more increased work that our agency is able to provide to the community. But I think one of the funny things is that your question prompted me more to think about all of the women who are juggling so many roles right now. And I'm not a mother, but I have so many friends and loved ones who I hear how hard they are on themselves right now. And I think that, recognizing how important self-care is, and knowing that it is okay to not always be perfect, and it is okay to make mistakes, and it is okay to take a moment to put yourself in a position that's only about you. That you say, no, I am my first priority right now, and I'm gonna, even if it means set a timer and it's 15 minutes, and you say, I need 15 minutes of me time to just reset and get back into your zone, and it's funny, I've done a lot of work and understanding with our community, that we've done a lot of work around resiliency. Wilmington has been through a lot, and we have had a lot of adverse community events, hurricanes, that this is no different. It's longer, it is different, right, but it is an adverse situation that we're all going through together, and recognizing that the first step to be able to help others is to make sure that we're in our right zone is the important thing to take away for us to build a stronger whole all together. So
yeah, I noticed that when we are in this time of working from home and teleworking, that the work life and the personal life have very much become merged together, and the lines are very blurred. And sometimes I find myself working or checking an email at 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock when, oftentimes my time would cut off at 6 or something of that nature. And so I agree, having that patience with yourself, setting boundaries still, like it's okay to not answer every email immediately. Today I struggled. We have a lot of changes happening at UNCW to ensure students can get back on campus, to ensure faculty are supported, to make sure graduation is somewhere in the forefront, right? And this morning it was like, okay, I could get ready to be on email at 7:30 and answer all these emails, but no, I'm going to take my lunch early and I'm going to go for a jog, and I'm going to make sure my mindset is right. I'm going to make sure that I've taken the time for me because I know the rest of the day will not be for me. And so I think that sometimes you're right. Like you have to be very much introspective, and you really have to know when it's time to push away. And the other thing that I've learned in this time of change is that everyone is heightened, right? So like emails feel different. Are very emotional. And as women leaders, we have always been told to balance our emotions with our pragmatic and there's no crying in baseball. You have to be able to manage this. And so now I find myself, like even with my team, there's a question I have them do every day, and it's how are you doing outside of work? Because now we are managing people's emotions, the child care, the taking care of their families, the ability that their mom may be ill and they can't arrive to be there. My mom's in Ohio, and I have her in a protective bubble because I know that I can't get to her right now if I needed to. So I think that we have had to pivot the way that we lead, and we have had to add back in emotions and add back in that level of care. And sometimes I've even told my team, you need to push away. I got your emails for the day. You need to go for a walk, And so being able to identify that is also a part of being a female leader or a boss, is knowing when to help your team learn when they need to pivot. Mm-hmm.
Good for you for taking that jog today.
Oh my gosh, a 10K. Yeah.
And I guess this is kind of a smooth transition into that. And, like you said, lines have definitely become more blurred since we're working from home now, and finding that balance between work and life, and having a smooth transition at, 6:30, 7 o'clock, I'm turning off my computer tonight because I need to do this. How have you guys found that that has changed in this time, but also just before all of this started happening, how have you maintained that work-life balance and creating that for yourself and keeping it up?
I had a mentee ask me, well, how do you do it? I'm still in class. I'm working on my MBA. And new job, kids, right? And I never say work-life balance. I say work-life choices. And I was laughing when you guys say, well, you may pull away at 6. Well, for me, last night, I had to do my presentation. So I made a choice not to cook, asked the husband to do it, but I stayed at the computer and I did my work. So that was a choice. Whereas tonight, I'll make another choice. As soon as I leave here, right, 4 o'clock, 4:30, whatever time, that's it with work. So I call it work-life choices, because I really don't think, as a leader, and as we grow in responsibility, more work is going to be required. So you make the choice. So instead of a Sunday, I may be working, but that's the choice that I made, right? And that's my sanity, because if I did not get it done, if I chose to shut down on Friday and wait till Monday, I would not be healthy. I'm not healthy. So I think it's work-life choices that we have to make daily.
And you're right, and I feel like every day is different, right? So, asking your partner to cook, or you're cooking, or order in, and support a local. I know you like that. But I think that the one thing that I realize is that every day is different. So there are days I'm going to work till 9 o'clock, and it's just going to be that day. But also knowing that the other day it may be an 11:30. You have to be able to ride with the ebb and flow of the day. And not be, my best friend always says, ride the wave, Shaw, ride the wave. And I used to always want to I have a notebook here. Like, I mean, I carry it wherever I go. And he would always be like, I need you to put the notebook down, you know? So I think sometimes we still have to be able to ride the wave, you know, understand the ebb and flow of the day. Some days are going to be valleys, some days are going to be peaks, and you're going to be able to have to rise to both. And they're both going to be successful. But you have to listen to your heart and your core. Absolutely. And know that, you know, it's okay to work late if you're a late worker. If you're a person who has to end at 5, end at 5, you know? But know who you are to the core. I think as long as you stay committed to your core and yourself, it'll be okay. It'll be okay.
I think one thing that I've leaned on during this time is that from my professional learnings in social work, we learned a lot about compartmentalizing. And, you know, in a field like social work, you are getting a lot of emotional baggage is not necessarily the word, because you don't have to carry it with you if you know how to process it and then put it in a file and close the drawer sometimes. And I think for me during this time, there's so many scary unknowns, and there's so many things that I know people are going through right now that I have been very deliberate about what I allow myself to be concerned about right now. You know, that there are a lot of things that are out of my control, but there are still a lot of things that I can control, and I can control how I feel about things. And so recognizing that, because to me right now, that email at 9 o'clock is a hungry kid that needs me to do an enrollment at 9 o'clock to make sure that they can get food the next day. So I am having days that I'm working late, but I also have days that I leave my computer at work and I say, today is not the day that I can't compartmentalize this additional emotional burden right now. So it's in a drawer, and the drawer is closed for the rest of the night. And allowing that to be okay, I think, is important. So I think, you know, especially during this time when there's so many emotional things trying to draw our attention away, that you just have to put it in the file, put it in the notebook, or put it where it goes.
Dresser and add more drawers.
And buy a new filing cabinet. Because exactly. You know, that's the way to keep centered and know when the drawer needs to be closed for the day. And sometimes the drawer is going to open all the way up, and it's time to organize the files. So.
And to kind of just close things and wrap things up, Sherry, I see you brought a book and your notebook with us today, but what kind of, just to leave our viewers today with a little bit of advice or any type of podcasts, books, classes, resources for people that are looking to get into either leadership roles or just kind of gain that confidence or find their voice, what can you leave them with? And Sherry, I'll let you kick it off for us.
Yeah, I'd say a couple things that I've done that I always recommend to my mentees is that, one, develop your own leadership library. So there are books that are amazing for you. Right now, my book is this one, but you know, Simon Sinek has a lot of great books. There's a lot of amazing women who have wrote books. You know, Leaders Eat Last is one that Simon wrote that is really good. You know, there's other ones to understand, you know, when to push away. So I think that, you know, asking people what they're reading is really important. There's a lot of podcasts. We're all Brene Brown fans, and there's a lot of opportunity there. There's some local organizations that have some amazing podcasts and opportunities. The other thing I like to do is journal. You know, sometimes I don't know if the information is, you know, where I'm ready to share, but it gets it out of me and it gets it in somewhere else. And who knows, that may be something I can pull to later. So I journal. I always keep a notebook on me because I know that I will find magic. I find magic being here with you all, and so I feel like, you know, whatever I can grab, I want to make sure that I capture. So I always keep some notebook around or a memo book, something, you know. I give notebooks away and journals away, but I think that that's important as well, is capture those moments. You don't have to own them yet, but they're going to reveal themselves where they need to be placed. And then my biggest thing is find your board of directors. Find those people that will root for you, but also will hold you accountable, those that are going to push you, those are going to challenge you to pull back, you know, a little bit too, and find that space. I've been working really hard to get healthy these last year, and so a lot of my personal board of directors has really helped me achieve a monument. I've lost about 98 pounds as of today. And so, yeah, and so it's been really good because now, I can get out and say, I'm gonna go run or I'm gonna go bike or something, but that momentum is helping me drive other ways. And now I'm not only a leader at work, but I'm also helping people know that self-care is very important. And you can lose yourself, when you're trying to climb the professional ladder a lot. And I think those would be things, your personal board of directors, they'll hold you accountable, but also pivotably is you gotta practice self-care.
Sure. And Caitlin?
So as opposed to being something concrete like a book or a podcast, I think I would really just echo Sherry's board of director idea. I think I learned so much from other people, and I think that one of the things that I'll say is expressing your vulnerabilities to other people around you. And I'll say, even just in terms of this panel today, I had some imposter syndrome sneaking in, and I voiced that to people around me. And just hearing other people, hearing a third party or an outside opinion changes what your brain can process and learn so much. And so I think that recognizing that you have so much to learn from other people around you, and asking people, having people tell you about what they are and who they are and what they do, you can learn so much, and it piques your interest in other things to learn about. And I'm a lifelong learner, and I know that sounds cheesy to say, but I am that nerd in the front row of every training, asking all the questions. And so I think just being hungry and eager to learn whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily have to be a leadership book that sit down. If that's not your style, then that might not be the way that you learn to be a better you. And so I think just learning from all the opportunities that are around you is really the way to just constantly grow.
Yeah, what I remember is me and our group, women, we all talked about, is it Tiger King? What is the Netflix thing? Is it Tiger King? Like, we all watched it, and we all found different ways, and we tried to apply it to leadership and self-care and all these things. So, you're right, it doesn't always have to be a leadership, but it can be something fun and dynamic, and everybody's enjoying it, and that may be the way that you develop.
All right, Robin, close us out.
Let me. So no pressure. No pressure. But honestly, I think you all said what I wanted to say. So I'll just highlight some key points that I would like to share with you. And the theme is boss up, right? Yeah. And we all agree, opportunities, continuous learner, always learn, right? And they said your board of directors, so I want to say a point about that, and be you. So what I want to emphasize is be you. And I say you is your own uniqueness. Now, as you are doing you and learning and growing, we always say, have your board of directors, or find someone who you would like to be like, learn from them. And I want to go a little bit further than that, because when I was taught that maybe 15 plus years ago, 20 plus years ago, starting out in my career, I was just looking at the exterior. How did they walk? How did they talk? How did they present themselves? But then I would lose me. Right. So I'm telling you to do you, but if I'm imitating what they're doing, I'm losing me. So as they say with the board of directors, let me just define that. How did they get to where they are? What are they reading? Why are they able to sit on this stand? What have they gone through? What experiences did they have? What exposure? What opportunities? So definitely be you, your authentic self in this world today it's just too laborious to be someone else. So do you, and in that board, learn their steps. Learn, what did they do to get to where you want to be? So not just the exterior, not just what I call the superficial things. So I hope that was able to wrap it up. Okay.
Thank you, ladies, very much. And thank you guys for joining us today. To see the rest of our videos for our Leadership Accelerator virtual workshops for real leaders, visit wilmaleadership.com. Thanks.